Hi and welcome to my final prototype. This is Line of Fire. So we've started out with just some basic animations. I haven't done 3D AI before, so it was something interesting, but it was definitely um, very enjoyable to to design the various phases and states that each AI goes through. Next up, I moved on to the UI system and scoring. So how it works is there are thresholds that the player has to reach to move on to the next phase, and they gain points for staying alive and not getting hit. I was going to put pickups in, but I ran out of time due to poor scoping. But now I've effectively blocked out the rifleman. I've started moving on to the attacks. Just some basic ones. They alternate between an even and an odd index, and they have a ripple fire, which didn't work with animations, so I had to replace it with a coroutine. And in this clip here, I'm showing off the bug fixing I had to do for the ripple attack. As I mentioned, the animations didn't work so well with the animation events, and it would get stuck in the coroutine loop. I'm not sure how I fixed it, to be honest, but if it works, it works. However, a notable issue I had throughout, since I wasn't able to use animation events for the riflemen and the grenadiers at the very least, was I had to work on and perfect the timing of the bullets instantiating so it didn't look off. I didn't quite get it in the end. It went back and forth from looking really good and then really awful, whereas the animation events looked brilliant for the shotgun and the Lewis gun. Fully aware of how awful the future AI was going to be if I kept the structure I had at the beginning, I started working on modularizing the AI into a couple of functions and a clear, concise cycle that each troop goes through. They would check what phase it is, what attack they start with, when they finished attacking, what attack do they do next given the phase, and they repeat that cycle until you reach the threshold. Now onto the feedback. Most of it coincided with what I already knew I needed to do, fortunately. So it was very easy to make a plan moving forward on what I needed to do next. I knew that I definitely wanted to add more enemy variants. I wanted to challenge the player more, and as seen by the anonymous student below, I decided to start speeding up the bullets as you went through, making more complicated and exciting attack patterns, and additionally adding a new phase that implemented a new enemy type on top of the Lewis guns, which was the Colonel himself. As you can see, I was fully aware of how brutal the UI looked. The HUD was atrocious, so I took some art that I made before, I slapped it in, and later I added some sound effects similar to what you get in Animal Crossing or Pokemon, just to read out the narrative. It was something to engage the player a bit more than just running around in circles. Then to further expand upon the lack of content that I brought to the critique session, I started structuring out a whole range of new attacks that each would do, and I made finite state maps to better plan out how exactly I was going to make the most in the least amount of time. And it worked fairly well. As you will be seeing in a second, the grenades were a problem throughout. There were issues with the physics regarding it. For some reason they wouldn't interact with various layers, in spite of the fact I'd very specifically told it to. So we had 3 iterations of smashing my head against the grenade logic. Next, as you very crucially brought up, a big UX thing I was missing was a representation of the player's health and their state within the game. So I made a few animations for the hearts, and I added a top bar that neatly put your score and your health in the same place, in a non-intrusive area of the screen, as it would only cover up the wall. Next was the implementation of the Colonel and his shotgun. In my first prototype, I remember doing stupidly unnecessarily complicated vector maths to get 3 different directions for projectiles. But instead I just set it to a parent and I told it to use the local transformation. Here we have some grenade shenanigans. I don't want to go over it too much because there is so much of it. I believe in the end the issue was I wasn't stopping the rigid body from continuing after contact. Now I moved on to what I consider 2 of the bigger improvements alongside the health UI. I started adding the main menu UI. It was a lot nicer, I think, than it usually is. It was composed a lot better. It wasn't just text in the middle of the screen, buttons down the middle. I decided I would go for something that used the environment a bit more. Sounds very art studenty, I know, but I suppose that is what we are. And then I managed to fix the going prone finally. I never intended to have it be jumping, but the issue was that the avatar was stopping the animation from playing, my custom animation. So we had to go back, and all I did was I turned off the avatar and turned it back on when they needed to go prone. And finally, after fixing the grenades, sort of, they're not perfect still, I would admit. I had to do a bit of debugging of the phases. They weren't cycling through properly in phase 4. So after playing it a billion times, I was done. So I'm going to be quiet now, and you can see for yourself.